In this video, we will explore tales of night hag encounters experienced during sleep paralysis. Sleep paralysis can happen to anyone on any given night. It could happen to you tonight after watching this. To those who have never experienced it, it can be terrifying, as it may lead to seeing horrors worse than out of any Lovecraftian tales. Normally when you sleep, your brain sends signals to relax muscles in your arms and legs. This protects your body during periods of REM sleep to ensure that you stay still. With sleep paralysis, you regain awareness, but your muscles are still effectively paralyzed. You're also still in a dream state, and like altered reality, your brain can and will create things in the real world. For most, it is the night hag who appears. Is she the reason some people die in their sleep? And what causes her to appear? While we don't have concrete answers to these questions, we do know that almost every culture and region on the planet has versions of this monstrosity visiting them. Let's dive into some of these encounters. The Black Eyed Hag. It happened for the first time when I was in my teens. I couldn't move and I didn't understand what it was or what was happening. I'd fallen asleep quickly, but then woke up with the pressure of something pushing down on my right upper chest and shoulder. My legs, arms, and even head would not move, could not move no matter what I did. The air in the room felt heavy and more humid than usual. I was able to move my eyes though and looked at where the pressure was coming from, slowly glancing to my right, and what I saw scared me worse than anything I'd ever experienced. I couldn't scream though, and my heart was pounding and the pressure on it felt like it was getting heavier. An old and terrifying looking woman's long, pale covered arm was pressing on my right shoulder and chest. She had long, craggy, wet and matted gray hair, a pale greenish face, a long nose, and creepiest of all, her eyes were completely black, like the body modification people you see who tattoo their eyes with black ink. She smiled at me, but the smile, it wasn't a kind smile. It was a smile that said, "Soon we will get to know each other better." My heart continued beating like I was running, and I tried to turn my gaze away, but I could now feel her wet, rancid breath on my face. I closed my eyes and waited, and that's when I seemed to snap out of the paralysis. It was the most terrified I'd ever been, and I had some bad nightmares as a child, but this was different. It was the worst thing you could imagine, mixed with reality. The Grey and the Hag. One night, I left my windows open to let the breeze in. I don't remember falling asleep, but I was paralyzed when I regained awareness. I remember seeing black rain, and I could feel my body weighing 5 times its normal weight. I was sinking into the bed slowly. I turned my head, and I saw what looked like a gray alien smiling at me. It wasn't easy to move and I couldn't scream, but I slowly and forcefully managed to crawl to the edge of my bed to fall off and hopefully wake up someone in the house. I could feel its thoughts as if it were connected to mine. I wasn't supposed to be moving, was the emotion I felt from the being, but I did. I reached the edge, falling head first, and when I hit the floor, I was awake in my bed, face down, like I was when I first realized I was aware. My windows were still open, and I could feel the breeze, but the black rain was gone. Choking Old Hag. I was sleeping one night when I suddenly awoke. The room was exactly as it was when I fell asleep. I couldn't move or scream. I saw an old, scary lady standing in front of my window. She quickly moved to me and started choking me. I tried desperately to scream or move, but I couldn't. I could clearly feel her aged, bony, sinewy fingers wrapped tightly around my neck, though. It felt so real. Put your own hands around your throat and apply a bit of pressure. Now imagine this amped up to an 11. That's what it felt like. I could feel my heartbeat in my neck pounding in rapid pulses. It felt like I was struggling with her for a good 10 minutes, if you could call it struggling. Her face was emotionless but determined. She wanted to end me, I had no doubt about that. Then almost as quickly as it had begun, it was over, and I could move and scream, which I did, loudly. I was so terrified, I never slept in that room again. The wolf figure. I remember hearing a roaring sound in my ears, and seeing a shadowy figure in the middle of my room, either saying my name and laughing, or just watching me. It was so real. I refused to sleep as a child, but whenever I told my mom, she didn't take me seriously, until it started chasing me. I could move at first, and I would run around my room screaming and crying, trying to get away, but as I got older, it started to paralyze me, and I couldn't move apart from my eyes. I switched rooms because I thought it was the room, but it started to happen in that room too. Now, it was a wolf-type figure, and it was on my chest. I felt safer sleeping at other people's houses, so I basically lived at my friend's house over that summer, until it started to happen there. Since then, it's happened almost every week for 2 years, and each time as terrifying as the last. Evil emanates from her. I'm 42 and first had a nightmare about a terrifying witch at the age of 16. She kneels on my chest and stares into my face, slowly, getting nearer and nearer. I'm completely terrified. She wears a black cloak and hood. Her face is like a witch, and evil emanates from her like the heat from a strong campfire. Only imagine that the fire was sending out cold evil instead. Other times, I can be lying on my stomach, and she will creep her hand up the back of my head, down my face, and then hook her fingers under my top teeth and pull my head back. She will also bite, sit on the bed, knock on the door, call my name, and generally scare the crap out of me. Here I am, a grown woman, and as terrified of her as any monster under the bed or in the closet as a kid. She strangled my girlfriend. I was awakened by my screaming girlfriend. She had her arms up as if she was pushing on something. Her eyes were open and she looked awake. I called her name a few times and I tried to shake her. Then her eyes closed and she went back to sleep. When I woke her up again, she told me she was fighting an old lady that was trying to strangle her and blocking her view of me as if on purpose. Last night, I was awakened by something. I had no idea what it was, but I had this strong feeling telling me that I should turn around and look at my girlfriend. As I turned around, I saw what looked like an old person's face moving away from me. At that exact moment, my girlfriend let out a scream and went back to sleep. So did I. And this morning when we woke up, the first thing my girlfriend told me was, I had a dream about that old lady again last night. What are the odds that both of us would see the same person or spirit, and why did it move away from me? The woman and the Reaper. Old Hag is misleading. To me, she appears as a beautiful, evil-looking woman in a long, flowing white gown and veil. At times, the Grim Reaper accompanies her. It happens when I'm on my back, just before falling asleep. Since the first occurrence, I've always felt that if she ever gets me under the bed, I'd be gone for good. She hovers across the room and slowly comes closer. The Reaper in the black hooded cloak stands at the foot or side of my bed. I can't move or speak, but I can hear everything. As she gets closer, it seems like her beauty was just an illusion, and I see her for what she really is. Evil, incarnate, older than time itself. The fear level is intense, and while I eventually wake up, the terror stays with me past dawn. My wife and I both saw her. I've had various experiences of sleep paralysis. I've seen my bed covers pushed down onto my face, unable to move or shout. An ancient female voice has hissed in my ear, bringing feelings of terror. Once, I saw the old woman looking at me through my bed covers. She was gray and had a menacing grin. I started hitting the covers where this misty gray face was staring from. My wife woke up at this point and screamed, saying she saw the woman's face too. I think there's more to it than just the scientific explanation. I think it's part physical and part supernatural. I think our brains pick up a more expansive signal when we are between sleep and awake state. The hag and the bald man. I was watching TV around 1 a.m. at my grandma's house. My granddad was in his room asleep across from the room that my grandma and I were in. She was asleep as well. I heard a grunting noise, like someone was trying to yell for help but was being choked. I also heard an old woman and a man laughing. I was afraid and woke up my grandmother. We ran to my granddad's room. He was trying to wiggle himself free. Some old woman was sitting on him, holding him down, and a bald man was sitting in his chair looking at us, laughing. We could slightly see through both, and we knew they weren't human, but evil spirits that felt timeless. We were struggling with trying to free Granddad, and the ghost thought it was so funny that we couldn't touch her. Our hands and arms went right through her to his body. The bald man then stood up tall over us. He was angry that we tried to wake Granddad. I turned on the room's light, and the spirits rose up and disappeared, nose to nose with the hag. I've been trying for about a year to induce sleep paralysis as a gateway to lucid dreaming. I heard about this phenomenon, but never experienced it. Tonight was the first time I had a breakthrough. I did as I always do. I lie still on my back, stare at the ceiling, waiting for the numbness to begin. It doesn't. Instead, all the noise outside of my window stops, as though someone has muted the world outside. I close my eyes just briefly, and when I open them again, she's there, on my ceiling. She just kind of floats downward, dragging her fingers down the wall as she does. The sound is sickening, and the closer she gets, the more trapped I feel. Imagine feeling your fight or flight, but not being able to do either. That's what it felt like. She stopped when she was nose to nose with me and put her other hand on my chest and just stayed there, all the while staring at me. Her eyes glowed, cycling from a fluorescent purple to an almost arterial red. Then someone in the room next to me dropped something, and it just levitated upward into the ceiling, her face the last to melt away before I came to. Hair-pulling hag. A week ago I was awakened in the middle of the night by the sound of what I thought was my husband's voice saying, "She has my hand." He sometimes mumbles in his sleep, but it's never coherent, and it hasn't hasn't happened in a long time. I was laying with my head resting on his forearm, so I immediately opened my eyes and I saw that his hand wasn't moving or anything. Suddenly, at the same time, an enormous pressure covered my face to the point that I couldn't breathe or open my mouth. As this happened, I had the feeling of a hand pressing down on the top of my head and pulling my hair so hard that I felt physical pain. I began to scream, but I couldn't open my mouth for several seconds. Finally, the pressure stopped and it was over. I wanted to brush it off as a nightmare, but I can't figure out why I felt pain when I was definitely conscious afterward, and my eyes were open the entire time. But when I looked at my husband, he was asleep.